Hey, it's Mike here, and today my response to YouTuber Megan Bowen, who recently quit her vegan diet after her doctor told her to for several reasons, including her IBS and eventually bleeding intestines. So we're gonna discuss that.
So the doctor told me that I'm just gonna have to eat like animal products.
So we're just gonna hear her story, look at what she tried as a solution, and throw out what could be some other solutions. And of course, I'm just a mere MPH student YouTuber. I'm not a medical professional, so I'm just gonna not be giving advice. I'm just gonna be exploring various research things. And also I wanna say, be nice. This person clearly wasn't doing very well, and they don't seem to be malicious. You know, they're not already selling some carnivore diet scam like some other ex-vegans who are quite malicious. So let's keep it chill and let's go. All right, first of all, I know a lot of you are definitely tired with my ex-vegan analysis videos, but then why are you watching the video? Tell me why you're watching the video, huh? Because you want to know how things go wrong, and hey, you guys voted for this. I threw out 4 options, and this one won in terms of my next video, and that's another benefit of people who are actually subscribers. They can vote on things like that, unlike those lurking non-subscribers who just rely on random sidebar suggestions and then miss 3/4 of my videos. You know who you are. All right, let's just get to the video. Here she is.
Hello friends and family, this is Megan Bowen, aka 저는 미국 사람입니다.
What? I actually have no idea what she said, but you gotta love YouTubers. We all develop our own random tics. Mine as of late is just shouting like and subscribe at various times throughout daily life, like in the line at the grocery store or during the act of lovemaking. I'm joking, I don't do that.
I suffer from IBS. If you have IBS, you know that the bloating is it's just not cosmetic. It actually physically hurts, like to move. And you feel like you're getting like super bad, like cramps, even worse than period cramps.
And for those of you that aren't aware, IBS is irritable bowel syndrome, and it appears that she had it before she went vegan, so this isn't like an issue she developed when she was a vegan in particular. And we are gonna go in depth in that on a bit, but moving on.
So I went back to the doctor, and they ran a whole bunch of tests and like checked and did like scans. She showed me the pictures, and I was actually like so shocked, but my intestines were actually bleeding all into my abdomen.
This is a good reminder that if you are having some health issues, if you can, you should go to the doctor. And also the fact that I have to say if you can is another reason we need to have universal access to medical care.
So the allergy and intolerance tests came back, and then we found out, one, that I'm allergic to soy, which is why even though when I cut down on my fiber and I was eating all that high protein tofu, things just got worse, like really bad.
Though it wasn't crystal clear, it seems that this bleeding aspect was a direct result of the soy allergy. Just for people in general to set the record straight, soy does not equal vegan. It's not soyganism, which would be defined as, quote, seeking to include as much as is practical or possible soy products all day, every day. I'm sure some of you out there are actually soygans. And I know a lot of soy-free vegans. You know, soy is a popular source of vegan protein, but there are plenty of other sources. You know, for other people, I know she has issues with these, but you have all of the other legumes, which we're going to explore the issues with in a bit. You also have things like nuts and seeds. You have that mycoprotein or mushroom protein corn product line that's out there. In addition to corn, you have quinoa. You also have quaaludes. I'm totally joking. I just wanted to say another Q word that is not a good source of vegan protein.
And seitan and like mock meats and stuff, can't do beans, can't do tofu. What are you gonna eat?
She says she can't do seitan, which is wheat gluten, which is unfortunate. And I wonder what happens with that. But then there's also some obscure, somewhat higher protein grains. Of course, you have amaranth, which is related to quinoa. But she says she can't do any mock meats, which I would be curious about because, again, things like corn, not as many people try them, but it's an obscure type of protein. Like mycoprotein is not even plant protein, it's fungi. Like and subscribe. Oh, there it goes again. As for beans, I don't know about all legumes in general, but for beans, she appears to have just completely crossed them off the list. You know, I just wonder, what about other legumes like lentils? And maybe some beans are worse than others? I don't know. But I just have to mention that, as this study says, legumes are the #1 dietary predictor of elderly survival. These are arguably the healthiest food group that we have. So I feel like the goal should be to reintegrate this food group, if possible, through some type of treatment. We'll get to some of those solutions. I hate to be like, we'll talk about that later, we'll get to that, but we will. Anyway, the main contributor to IBS difficulties from beans was probably the oligosaccharides. And there are things you can do to lower these pretty considerably depending on the bean for soaking. Soaking white beans lowers the oligosaccharide content by about 30%. Or types of cooking, pressure cooking lentils lowers them by about 36%. Would this put it below a threshold so that it wouldn't bother her as much? I don't know. It also claims that canned beans lower these significantly, and I can't find any published data on that, but it's probably equivalent to soaking because it's being soaked in a can. But what probably takes the cake here for lowering oligosaccharides in legumes would be sprouting, which is cute. Raffinose oligosaccharides of particular concern are, massively reduced after 2 days of sprouting and basically entirely gone after several days. It's also worth mentioning that just soaking beans in the second study for black-eyed peas, for example, lowered them by 82%, but after 2 days of soaking, it went down by 95%. That's huge. And if you don't want to be like soaking and sprouting and all this stuff yourself, well, you can buy sprouted, dried legumes online, so you can just have them sent to you. And I find it very interesting because traditionally this is what a lot of cultures do, and there's probably a reason they do, and it's probably because a portion of their population digestively benefited from it. There's other benefits as well, but this opens the door that through sprouting, she might be able to include a large variety of legumes and get that natural, healthy protein level back up. But that wasn't her solution. She then started eating the typical eggs and seafood.
So I told her, I was like, okay, well, how about we try things like eggs and bivalves, things like oysters. I'll have fish occasionally. It's a little bit difficult, especially if someone like me who always believe that there always must be a plant-based solution.
And she points to the oysters as an ecological thing. She says that they're better than other fish, but I'm surprised that more ex-vegan people, when they quit, don't go straight to oysters because they're probably lowest on the sentience chain as well. But no, they end up going straight to like large vertebrate fish that are pretty intelligent. But later in the video, she does eat salmon and she doesn't really have a nutritional excuse for this. So I don't know why she went vegan. I don't know if it was ethical. I don't know what's going on. I'm just calling it like I see it. And as for eggs, I address some nutritional concerns a little bit later on, but like ethically, what happens to the male chicks? Not good things. And then of course, if you are trying to be more ethical and buying from like smaller farms, then you still have the issues of like osteoporosis, egg-bound chickens, all of those horrible things that I would just rather not be involved in. And now for fiber, because the doctor gave her a 35-gram limit, a cap on how much fiber she can eat in a day.
And especially if you have to keep under a low amount of fiber, which is something that the doctor told me, I have to eat under 35 grams of fiber a day or so.
And for me, I just couldn't take the recommendation of a single doctor as like the word of God. I would probably go straight to a plant-based vegan dietitian and see what they have to say about this. But yeah, that 35 grams is just a standard doctor's recommendation if you have IBS. And as Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan, gotta love Ryan, he mentioned that of course there are different types of fiber, and to elaborate on that, we have insoluble fiber, which is things like cellulose, that plant structure, and then soluble fiber that digests in water. And for IBS, there appears to be quite a big difference. In fact, soluble fiber appears to help things out from this meta-analysis of like 14 studies. Quote, soluble fiber is effective in treating IBS. What? And it does seem like the types of food that she's talking about, she might be fine with soluble fiber and not so much with a lot of insoluble fiber. I mean, there's foods that she's eating that are more starchy, like potatoes and oats. Those are a little bit higher in the soluble versus insoluble fiber territory. And clearly those are foods that she feels okay incorporating into her diet, so she must have not had as bad of an experience with them in the past. So roots and tubers, as well as nuts and nut butters, which I believe she was eating in her video, have less insoluble fiber, a little bit more soluble fiber. And so those are good sources of food for her. Now we just need to get on the topic of protein, because I think this is the crux of it here. This is really what has forced her to quit. As you might know, the official RDA for women is 46 grams of protein a day. She's lifting weights, considering herself an athlete, and because of that, she has a goal of at least 110 grams of protein per day.
You know, what are you gonna eat to get even all the calories that you need, let alone, you know, the protein, especially if you're an athlete like me, someone who works out every day.
She says she can't do protein powder and that she's tried all the protein powders. I think there's one that she hasn't tried, which I'll mention in a bit, but there's one other angle that I doubt she's tried, which I think is just a good strategy for protein powder in general, and that is integrating it into other foods. For example, you can make like protein pancakes, or like vegetable protein pancakes that are savory. You can eat some of those more higher protein pastas. For example, you've got, I believe it's Bonza, and a serving of that only has like 5 grams of fiber, because it makes sense that you would feel sick after trying to slam down like maybe 40 or so grams of protein powder in a shake. Like, that's going to make anybody feel crappy. But if it's integrated into foods, it can be more naturally digested. Another solution there would just be to not slam a lot of protein powder down at once and just have like smaller shakes throughout the day that would be sort of digestively insignificant, but still get more protein in. Just a thought. And finally, as Happy Healthy Vegan said, there's lentine, which is those water lentils, or duckweed protein, which has something called prohydrolase in it, which is supposed to help a lot with the digestive aspect of it. However, it is cultured in a medium that contains soy. That might be a microscopic amount of soy. It might be totally fine for her, or it might not. Worth exploring in my book. And just on the protein powder topic, like, I know it's not ideal. It's not my ideal solution either, but you can't really try and attack a vegan diet for this, especially in the athletic realm, when, as this study shows, over half of athletes take protein powder, and obviously they're not all vegan. Just had to throw that out there. What I feel like is really going on is that she's prescribing to the overconsumption of protein school of thought. She thinks she needs over 100 grams of protein, over twice the RDA for protein. And a lot of natty bodybuilders, vegan bodybuilders, are able to get quite large without even consuming protein powder. Obviously, they don't have the food restrictions, but just for the sake of argument, Robert Cheek, who I recently talked to, put 100 pounds on his frame without relying on protein powder. People like Derek Tresize. He claims to not eat protein powder as well, and quite jacked. Haven't mentioned him in a while. But I can just say she's consuming too much protein, or thinks she needs too much protein, but we can look to the actual research on muscle protein synthesis, and this is where I think she definitely is eating way too much protein. The data show that there is a cap on the amount of protein that the body can utilize from a single meal in terms of muscle protein synthesis, turning that protein into muscles, utilizing it to build tissue, and that cap is around 20 to 25 grams. And this has also been described as 0.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which for, I don't know how much she weighs, a 130-pound woman would be about 18 grams of protein as the cap for what could be used from a single meal. Now, this is easily achievable even with some of her restrictions with whole plant foods, and anything extra is sort of just extra work for your kidneys. You're going to be peeing it out unless you're on steroids. I'm sure you can use a little bit more then. So later on, when she shows that she ate 150 grams of protein in a single day, let's just say, yeah, the vast majority of that is just being peed out. Even if she's doing 2-a-day workouts, then she just needs a couple 20-gram meals after each one, and then of course the other protein she eats throughout the day. So yeah, she's not going to be that much higher than the normal RDA instead of 110 to 150 grams. So to take a unique perspective on this, she's not being vegan so that she can pee out some extra protein. That sounds bad. As for the whole IBS thing, from seeing a lot of these cases of ex-vegans, I can't help but think that, quitting a vegan diet and eating these things is just going to give her a temporary reprieve from IBS, as usually happens, and then people often just go down further rabbit holes of more extreme diets, sometimes to the carnivore diet, until they realize things are worse than they ever were, and then pretty soon they're drinking pee and sun gazing for 5 hours a day, and eventually you find them in an alleyway with nothing but a Slim Jim. And I can't help but thinking, because the timeline is unclear, that a lot of these more extreme IBS issues, or even previous IBS issues, were a result of her having some soy in her diet, if it really is a soy allergy issue, and creating more and more digestive issues as she ate more and more soy, trying to hit all of those protein needs until eventually her intestines were bleeding due to a severe allergy. Again, the timeline was unclear. I don't know what other diets she tried that were vegan after finding out about the soy allergy, or if she just quit right then and there and decided to throw out all legumes because they had been bothering her. But fundamentally, to include things like legumes because they're so healthy, I think it should be a major goal. It would be a major goal of mine to be solving the IBS issues here. I mean, we're talking about not forcing yourself to eat foods that are going to be atherogenic and further the course of heart disease over a lifetime, because IBS, at the end of the day, is not the number one killer. It is heart disease. And of course, eating more saturated fat and cholesterol from animal products is going to accelerate that. Which brings me to solutions. There are a few herbal solutions that are at least worth looking at that seem to be generally safe from the research. The first one I always mention is that coated peppermint oil, which has some pretty amazing results. I mean, we're talking about, from one double-blind placebo-controlled study, about 75% of patients in the treatment group showing a greater than 50% reduction in basal total IBS symptoms. That is huge. And from this review, another one that I haven't mentioned is artichoke leaf extract. We're seeing a couple studies with some pretty good results here. You can pause to read those. Finally, you have curcumin, the active ingredient in turmeric, which may or may not help, but it could be promising. Seems to help everything. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on it, but a quick word on what she eats now. You can see in the morning she's eating an omelet and some oats, and she says she usually just eats egg whites, but in this particular situation, and every few days, she's eating those yolks of the eggs as well, which of course are pretty packed with cholesterol. And then she goes and just eats 5 oysters, which she even admits looks gross, but says is good. Those do have cholesterol as well. And then she closes it out with a meal of things like salmon and potatoes. And she displays chronometer at the end and conveniently doesn't include like fat portions, so we can't see how much cholesterol and saturated fat she's eating, but I can guarantee you that it's higher than when she was vegan. And again, those are the main dietary contributors to heart disease. And it really is worth noting, she isn't going like some type of reducitarian where you're eating meat like every one or few days or eggs every few days. No, she's officially gone to eating animal products 3 meals a day. In the end, looking at something like this comment, it's unclear to me whether or not Megan legitimately doesn't want to be vegan because she thinks that she has to follow this particular set of rules, or whether she just doesn't want to be vegan as well. It was maybe just getting a little too inconvenient and she just didn't feel like she wanted to keep doing it. And so she's just throwing these rules out there as like, haha, checkmate, you can't make me be vegan again. But fundamentally, these rules, especially the protein and fiber ones, are just not set in stone. The protein one, I believe, is massively overkill. The fiber one, I believe, especially if you're focusing on those soluble fibers, is just not hard and fast as a rule. And then finally, there are so many of those little things that you can do to maybe strategize and work around your legume issues with soaking and sprouting and stuff like that. She could meet her body's protein needs by focusing on a more starch-based, perhaps even higher fat diet if she feels like the volume is bothering her. And if she needs a little bit extra protein, if it were me, I would just try integrating some protein into real foods. Maybe try that lentil, maybe try some corn if I hadn't already. All right, that's it for today. Let me know if there are any foods that she could have thrown in that I forgot about, or food hacks that would help her feel good and not bother her IBS. All right, like and subscribe. Oh, I actually got to say it in context. All right, thanks for watching. But do hit the notification bell too while you're at it. Bye.